Over the years, Fast and Furious has filmed a bunch of movies, and over time the plot shifted. It has changed the way fans look at the franchise and argue that they need to revert the plot back to how it was in the beginning. The action-packed bad guy versus good guy on a heist-themed film are what some fans, more like haters, do not like about the Fast and Furious. They want to see street life in the racing world and guys almost getting hit by trains. The franchise starts off with the original The Fast and the Furious, which generated some buzz when first entering the movie industry and hitting the box offices in 2001. The two main stars of the film are Paul Walker and Vin Diesel, who pretty much led the way for what the movie franchise became today. It started off as a cheap-budgeted film that grew popularity after being released. Filled with cool cars racing in the streets, it had an entertaining plotline that had fans coming back for more. Dom, who is played by Vin Diesel, was a leader of a street gang in LA that was infiltrated by Brian, who is Paul Walker. The Skulls actor plays an undercover cop joining a street game in the streets of racing. He infiltrates the gang of street racers and electronics thieves headed by Dom and his girlfriend Letty. But as he does this, he falls in love with Dom's sister Mia. It got mixed reviews and was attacked by movie critics all over. A critic shares their 2 cents when talking about his predictions for the future of the Fast and Furious. The Fast and Furious remembers summer movies from the day when they were produced by American International and played in drive-ins on double features. It's slicker than films like Grand Theft Auto, but it has the same kind of pirate spirit. It wants to raid its betters and carry off the loot. It doesn't have a brain in its head. He then flames Paul Walker, ending with, "But it has some great chase scenes and includes the most incompetent cop who ever went undercover." Although the plot continued to stay the same, the sequel Too Fast, Too Furious lacked a few things. Still being what fans originally loved, movie critics see it as a critical dud even though it did numbers that would give them confidence to make a third and so on. Paul Walker was still in the movie, but Vin Diesel chose not to return. The script was unsatisfying, which he believed was repeating The Fast and the Furious. Too Fast, Too Furious brought Brian to Miami with his old friend Roman, where they find things about the movie that brings it to life besides just the racing. For example, the scenes where Brian and Roman both freak out flying through the air to crash into a yacht of bad guys landing on the top level. To find them both moaning and groaning and making comments that probably wouldn't be made in real life. This gives the viewer a taste of mediocre acting and stunt scenes that comes through as funny, because technology isn't as it is today, so it seems a little less real. Too Fast, Too Furious world grosses for the movie went up even though domestic grosses went down. The second movie's money came from 46% overseas compared to the 30% of the original. Their confidence was through the roof with what they decided to do with the third movie, The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. They did the unthinkable. Just like the second, Dom was not anywhere to be found, but Paul Walker was not invited back. They changed the location completely and introduced a new villain that was the lead of the bad guys and wasn't quite as good as before. What came out of this full sweep of change was a character named Han that eventually dies in the movie. Fans loved this character so much, the franchise decided to get a little creative and brought Han along for the ride. How could they do this if he was dead? Good question. Last second, they decided to shift the timeline of events so that Tokyo Drift was ahead in the timeline, being a flash to the future type of dealio, placing it between Fast and Furious 6 and Furious 7. The franchise took its first hit between the 7th and 8th movie when talking box office numbers. There are several reasons why people think the 8th did slightly less than the 7th. That was not the only thing noticeable about the jump between two movies. This is when the movie theme really started to change. One of the ideas was the fact that the directors changed from the 6th to 7th film and from the 7th to 8th film. When the directors change, so does the film. The highly talked about, very popular breaking news of the death of Paul Walker in real life is something that definitely took part in the change of the franchise as a whole. Losing one of the main stars and ruining the dynamic duo between Dom and Brian forces the franchise to need input from a range of many characters as well as their characters' position of power. Going from cops and robbers in the street racing world to jumping out of planes, the stunts just kept getting bigger and bigger. Once local police force and gang leaders are now federal law enforcement and national security. This is when many people believe this would have been a great stopping point for the series, but the money was the ultimate factor when deciding to continue. They just needed to know how to transition. The dynamic duo had great impacts on the franchise since the beginning, even though they had a few hiccups in the beginning. Starting out enemies, they gradually became partners in crime. And it was obvious they impacted the films the most, especially when looking at the box office numbers for every movie. It blew up in 2009 with the fourth movie to $360 million. Is it a coincidence that it happened when Paul Walker and Vin Diesel both returned to the series? No, it is a direct correlation to the franchise's success, as it continued after the last two films did not include both actors. Following the fourth movie came the fifth 2 years later in 2011, reaching almost double its numbers with $626 million. In 2013, the sixth movie brought in $789 million, and an eye-popping $1.5 billion for the seventh in 2015. With the series on a constant uprise, there was no way this snowball of a film series would stop producing excellent films. Even though after the seventh film they saw their first downspike in box office numbers, with $1.2 billion as the eighth movie premiered worldwide. It was official, they were one of the best movie franchises out there. Is it a coincidence that numbers dropped after the seventh movie? Nope. We can go ahead and assume that this happened because of Paul Walker sadly no longer being a part of the cast. As you can see, Paul Walker has impacted the franchise in a huge way, and has continued to inspire the remaining cast as they try to make Paul proud every day they work on a new movie. As they work on new movies, they dropped a trailer for the up-and-coming Fastx, the 10th movie of the franchise. Set to hit the theaters May 19, 2023 across the United States and the world, this trailer showed the future with gravity-defying action sequences and car races. People all over the internet have started to troll on social media jokes about how they went from street racing to saving the world. Then drops the second trailer where people continued to clown, posting a screenshot of a part of the trailer and captioning it, "The Transformers crossover we didn't know we needed." The film maintains its idea that it's the end of the road begins for Dom and his family. Will there be an 11th film, or will this one be the end? Regardless, the franchise has been producing great and entertaining films that will carry on for a lifetime.